Hello, good morning to all of those in morning time zones, and good afternoon, evening for those of you that are in the non-morning time zones. Really excited to get started today. Looks like we've already got 120 people in the room. We've got about 550 signed up, so we're going to give it about 2 or 3 minutes for the rest to join who are not able to get here right on the spot. Today's going to be fun. We've got about 33 slides. We're going to be talking about the evolving landscape of search discoverability and what it takes to be competitive in search as it changes, and it's changing very, very quickly. This has been something that I and my team have been spending every moment of every day exploring and understanding and testing so we can bring the most up to date and most relevant information to everybody that is working in and around search and visibility. Notably, this is all you'll see travel as the main focus here. This is actually applicable to anybody and everybody. There's not a specific necessary travel alignment required for this. So feel free to share this after. There'll be a recording that comes through with anybody in any industry that thinks it might be helpful. Because I think understanding how search is behaving in 2025 and onward is going to be very important for marketers. I've never been in a time in my life where I've felt that things are changing as quickly as they are today. It's fascinating. And we're having a blast. It's also somewhat terrifying because everything we've learned and know is changing so quickly. But we're gonna dive in. Got just nearing over 200 people in the session, so I think we've got a good turnout, and we'll go ahead and get started. So I want to just start here. Search, this thing that we've known for 20 plus years for discoverability, it has always been a search term and a couple of blue links, 10 blue links typically, except for that period of time where we had endless scroll, which was annoying. It still is 1 page, 2 pages, 3 pages, but it's generally 10 blue links is how we would have searched something and received it in Google for the past 2+ decades. And notably, Google's not the only search engine, but of course it has the by far largest market share. So we're going to be focusing primarily on Google today. When you go to Google and search trips to Vegas now, you get an answer that looks like this, which is very different. It's not any specific website. It is a combination of data and facts and information that's pulled from many websites and restated by a large language model, which we'll talk about in a minute. And outside of just travel is actually a higher frequency now, but across the board, 47% of US searches trigger an AI overview. And I want to talk about that a little bit more because AI overviews meaningfully affect click-through rate. So when someone searches and you see an AI overview, we'll get to that data in a second, but far fewer people click. So people will say that they're only seeing less than 1% of their traffic coming from large language models. Sure, fine. But then they'll go and discredit it as a channel and say it's not worth focusing on right now. To which I must respond, what is that? 88% of AI overview queries are informational and exploratory. That's from Search Engine Land just 2 weeks ago. That was a study that was done. So what that means is people are going to AI overviews, people are going to Google and triggering a response in AI overviews that they're not necessarily looking to make a purchase. But for the 12% that are not informational and are for a purchase or transaction, you better bet that them seeing a brand name prior increases confidence and is proven to increase click-through rate. So just because you're not getting a lot of traffic from AI large language models, whether it be AI overviews, whether it be ChatGPT, whether it be GPT search or Bing, doesn't mean it's not important. And I encourage you to test this and see what it looks like for your brand. But a couple of important notes that I said here. Clicks are no longer the currency of search. It's share of answer. It's the sentiment of that answer. It's how often your brand is answered and visible by AI. And it's this awareness metric that we need to focus around. It drives consideration. It drives direct visits. It drives bookings. And I just saw someone asked a question in the chat. I encourage you to do that. We're going to have time for Q&A at the end, most likely. I've got Amanda and Soleil on my team monitoring that, and we'll be looping back. My brain is too scatterbrained to be able to answer them between, so we're going to wait till the end for that. So note that today, just because you're not getting the traffic doesn't mean it's not worth optimizing for. So here's what we're going to talk about today, okay? We're going to talk about old search versus what's new. We're going to talk about the impact of that. We're going to talk about the trends that we're seeing, the types of visibility you can optimize for, the optimization playbook we're using for our 60 plus travel clients at Propellic, how you should be measuring visibility, and then the tool stack you could be using to do that, as well as next steps. But before we dive in, I want to go over some definitions. We're going to start with LLM, large language model. If you're not familiar, welcome to 2025. That's Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT, all of these tools that are able to go into it. You can chat with them, and they have a lot of context and data. We'll talk about how those get built later. We're going to talk about something called RAG, which is Retrieval Augmented Generation, is what that abbreviation stands for. And I'll talk about that in a little while. But this is a way that you can let a large language model access current information or access a database, because we're going to talk about how those things get trained and why that's so important to know about. AI search is a type or an application of a large language model where you're not just using the large language model, you're actually giving it access to search, which is retrieval. So it can look at current events, it can look at news. AI crawlers are just like SEO crawlers, like Googlebot. They're specialized bots that can scrape websites that identify themselves when they visit your website, so we can actually treat them differently than other types of traffic. AIO, you'll see that abbreviation a lot in here. That's specifically Google's AI overviews, these things. EEAT signals, expertise, experience, authoritativeness, and trust. And look at me, I forgot a comma. Oh well, it's the first of many errors you'll see in this presentation today. And then the last one I've got is the working term for optimization in large language models, generative engine optimization. We have a client that I sold that to, and she absolutely hates that term, GEO, because it's undiscoverable in search. But GEO, generative engine optimization, is the AI version of SEO. So let's talk about the impact of those AI overviews. You know, when you go and search Google and you get a full response at the top, the click-through rate from 2.94% when there's no AI overview drops 70% to 0.84. That's substantial. So clicks are deteriorating quickly. Traffic is deteriorating quickly. This is from Seer Interactive's AI overview impact study that was done in the latter half of last year, middle to latter half of last year. So things have changed. Things are changing so quickly. Data, you can only look back so far on research because the services are changing so quickly. But the main takeaway here is significant decrease in click-through rate on terms when AI overviews are present. A friend of mine, Kevin Indig, in a group, did this study. He has a newsletter called The Growth Memo. It's got about 20,000 subscribers. It's one of the most business-focused SEO newsletters that's out there. So if you're trying to find the overlap of someone who understands business and economics, but also in the context of SEO, I would highly recommend checking him out and then the whole study. But what they did is they ran a study, monitored 70 users' use of Google search over a long period of time, and found that with AI overviews, the next clicks went to another organic listing, and without substantially more. But you can see that the share of outbound clicks does change pretty meaningfully when you have AI overviews present. The user behavior just changes. So the search and discoverability are changing significantly, and we'll talk about how you can be visible for that in a second. This is interesting. So when you go on Google, Google is primarily navigational in nature. Google is generally there for people who are looking for a destination. So you go to Google and you type Netflix. I am, if you're a elder family member of mine, you'll go to Google and type Google. I'm kidding. That probably doesn't happen. But navigational just means you're looking for something that you know of. You might just not know the URL. And that was actually the reason Google was invented in the first place, was to replace the need for URL memory and maybe even IP address memory, which was why the domain name was created. But on average, Google searches are 1.9 words long. The average GPT query, 86 words, with the median being 15. So let's just use 15, because even then, that's 7 times larger than the average search query. So people are looking for much more specific, personalized information. And I want you to keep that in mind when we get to some of the slides where we tell you exactly how you can optimize for these, because you need to be answering specific questions. What we find generally is the more narrow the question, the more smaller brands can succeed. The wider the question, the bigger brands dominate. And the reason we find that is because branded mentions. And we'll talk about that as a factor of visibility as we continue through this slideshow. But the main takeaway is you do have a new opportunity as a smaller brand to be visible, the more niche you get. And then the larger you are, the more likely you are to show up in broader terms and queries. So let me talk about the 2 different types of modalities that we're working with. Modality is just the word that I use to refer to types of large language models. So there's 2 different types. Number 1 is going to be the trained large language model. And I'm going to talk about in a second how that gets trained, but that's Gemini, that's GPT-4, that's Claude. That is basically crawled once for that model, and then maybe periodically refreshed, but the data that it grabs when it grabs it is solid and it stays. The more frequently you show up, the more PR, the more reviews you have, the more likely you are to show up in something like ChatGPT when it's not using search. The other version is when it's using search, web-enabled search, where it's using real-time data from the search engines, and that would be something like Search GPT, that would be something like Perplexity, Claude Web, AI overviews. It's using real-time data and retrieval augmented generation, if you remember that term, which basically means it's able to check what's currently on the internet and provide that as part of the AI model, as part of the answer. And generally, we see that SEO recommendations, the general practiced SEO recommendations, are most effective at maintaining visible for that second category, because it's just accessing search. So here's how a large language model gets trained, okay? So this is for the first, sorry, you just saw my speaker note slide through because this is a fairly complex topic and I want to make sure I hit on it well. So number 1, you're going to see a company like OpenAI crawl the web. They'll use tools like Common Crawl to gather that data. They've built their own AI crawlers now. I mean, their own crawlers now, but they get data from Wikipedia, from news, from books, from code. They build this massive index of data. They even partner with external companies, whether it be news publishers, et cetera, to make that data even more effective and proprietary. But they just think of it, they have this massive text file. Then they go through that text file and they process it. They pre-process it. They remove, they deduplicate. They try to filter by language. They remove any personally identifiable information. And then they break it up into tokens. And tokens are like chunks of words. They're typically 3/4 of a word on average. But generally what they're going to use is they're going to use computer processing to understand and predict which word typically comes next when a specific word is used. So they're going to be doing what's called self-supervised training to minimize prediction error. And then finally, they're going to use humans. RLHF stands for reinforcement learning from human feedback. And what they're essentially doing there is they're making sure that it resembles what they would want to using human oversight. And then finally, some domain-specific fine-tunes for travel, for medical, et cetera. And then every so often, they'll refresh the data. Those are the continual updates. So that's on the LLM side. Okay, that's the baseline, like when ChatGPT first came out and it didn't have access to the internet, or like Claude 2 weeks ago when it didn't have access to the internet. That's what an AI model would do to get trained. Now, differently, AI overviews, which is really what's deteriorating search traffic right now, is a little different. Remember how I said that showing up in search-oriented AI tools is going to be a different approach? It's more similar to SEO. Here's why. So number one, Google's going to decide whether or not that query should trigger an AI overview. About 65% of travel ones do, about 47% of broad industry searches uh, trigger an AI overview. And in doing that, it's typically going to look at, is this navigational in nature? If someone's looking up netflix.com, do we really need to show them an AI overview? Do we just take them to do we just show them the direct link to Netflix? Or if somebody's looking to make a purchase, do we really give them an AI overview, or do we just show them the places to make the purchase? So that's the classification. It's this, then it's going to do retrieval. It's going to look at what's working in Google search right now, what's showing up in Google search. And it's not going to look at pages. It's going to look at passages, which means even the traditional ranking factors would be page level. In Google, you would optimize a page. Now it's specific segments of the page that you optimize, and that's what can appear in AI overviews in addition to search. It's going to fact score. So Google's going to use and cross-check multiple sites to make sure that the information it's getting is accurate and confident, which even with that, it gets it wrong fairly often. Please never try to cook a recipe that's delivered to you via AI reviews, at least not yet. You'll be disappointed because your soup will be a rock solid and your cake will be a liquid. But other than that, generally it's pretty good at fact checking. And then it's going to generate a draft, 2 to 5 sentences typically, and then cite sources. It'll do its best to cite the sources it knows it got the content from, and sometimes it'll pull some additional things, but typically up to 10 sources can be surfaced, and the most authoritative will be first, and we'll talk about how you can be in those in a second. And then it's going to run it through policy filters, safe search, medical and financial disclaimers, et cetera, just to make sure that it's safe to deliver, and then it'll render it and show it on the screen at the top. So how do you optimize for that? To repeat myself, actually, here's why you optimize for this. This is from Propellic clients. Of 417 keywords checked, 31.7% of them triggered AI overviews. And 100% of the time when those were in position 1 on the page, they were cited in the AI overview. So the real takeaway from that, and you can see descent. So it drops from 100 to 70 to 42 to 14 to 4 for the depending on where you're ranking. So there's a very strong, statistically significant correlation with ranking in position 1 and showing up in the AI overview, which tells us that the SEO activity generally is aligning with visibility in AI overviews. So yes, classic SEO signals prime that retrieval, the RAG that we talked about. If you're not in the top 10, you're going to find that it's very hard to show up in the AI overviews. Entity consistency and structured data. So that means schema markup, microdata. We'll talk about that in a second. There's a lot of volatility in Bing, a lot less in Google. It's cached data. So you'll get better data when you're testing for Google. And then both systems will credit the sources. So it can shape traveler brand perception, and it will. That's what we go back to, that Nielsen research, that brand knowledge influences purchase decisions. So just because you've got a search that you're showing up for with no traffic does not mean that it's not providing value to your brand. So optimization playbook. We broke it down into 4 categories just because we like to make things simple for my simple brain. And those are build, signal, feed, and test. And I see some chat notes going up, and I will answer them. Let me see if there's anything that's pertinent to this right here. Nothing yet. Okay, so there's Q&A sections for anybody who has. There's about 5 questions in there, but if you want to ask more, we'll get to them at the end of this. So note that 73% of search GPT URLs appear in Bing. So what you're typically finding is there's a strong overlap between showing up in search and showing up in those overviews. Same with Google. And then to that note, to that end, you want to have strong content, continue doing link acquisition, continue technical accessibility, all the standard SEO considerations. The core signals that typically drive visibility on the LLM knowledge, remember we've got these 2 modalities, are going to be frequent, consistent brand topic mentions. So where you say, Apple sells the best phone, topic and brand next to each other. When someone searches who sells the best phone, generally, the more frequently that's mentioned online, the more likely it is to surface. Additionally, sentiment is incredibly important, just as it is in search, but even more so here. If someone has positive reviews versus negative reviews in mass, it's more likely that the one with positive reviews is going to show up more visibly in search, in AI overviews, or in large language models, rather. Sorry. And then for traditional SEO, retrieval, AI overviews, GPT search, continue your SEO activity. So let's talk about the technical considerations. I've got 7 or 8 things here that you can be doing now to increase your visibility in these AI overviews, in these bots. Number one, don't block the crawlers, guys. Come on. There's one sure, my friend Christian said, there's one surefire way to make sure that you don't show up in this time in the future of visibility, and that's by blocking the crawler. He said that like a year and a half ago, and it stuck with me. Different words, but not a direct quote. I've got a link. Soledad on my team just dropped in the chat. That's a list of all the bots that we know that AI crawlers use. And I kind of want to just bring this up for a second. So there's 3 different kinds. Okay. Here's GPT bot. Okay. GPT bot is ChatGPT's crawler. It's what goes to your website and trains the model. It's where it gets that massive data dump. That happens maybe quarterly. There's another user agent. These are the things that say, hey, I'm visiting your site, called OpenAI Search Bot. OpenAI Search Bot is the bot that it uses to index your site for search. If you block that, you won't show up in GPT search. And then have you ever asked ChatGPT to go to a website and check something? If you have, when it did that, it identified itself to that website as ChatGPT user. So those are the 3 types. All of them should be able to access your website. There's no good reason to block them unless you really have gated content and you really don't want that to show up in models and you're making a conscious decision to not show up as a recommendation. So make sure you're letting the AI models access your website and content. Lost my speaker notes. They're there. I'm going to just start saying random things. Number 2, there is no guarantee or evidence that crawlers actually render JavaScript. So a web page is built of 3 different things. A web page is built of HTML, which is the content, CSS, which is the design, and JavaScript, which is the functionality. Depending on how your website is built, sometimes the whole page content will load and a little bit of functionality is added by JavaScript. In other ways, with like single page web applications and SaaS generally, you're going to have a frame load and then JavaScript's going to do all the work to create the content on the page, which virtually guarantees that the large language models can't access your content. So render your content on the servers. So when ChatGPT or Google Gemini or any of the crawlers visit your website, they get a version with all your content rather than just a blank white page, because otherwise you're not going to show up. There's no way that it's ever going to know what's on your site. That'll likely change over time, just like with Google. The reason for this is it's just very, very resource dependent to crawl websites and render JavaScript. That takes a lot of energy. And it probably is not a priority because it doesn't necessarily, it's maybe increases their access to content by 10, 20% for training. You can always just click view source. So if you right click in Google Chrome and click view source, you'll get a pop-up that looks like this. And you can see here, you'll notice in this that there's no content from my slides, I don't think, in this source code. You can just do like a Command F. See, there's nothing that says keep JavaScript light. You can't see my search box, but there's nothing on that page that says keep pages JS light. That page, in theory, this page, ChatGPT can't understand this because it's not rendering the JavaScript. Here's another one, structured data. So if you're familiar with schema markup is just structured code. It's pretty easily readable. It basically says, hi, I'm Propellic. Propellic is a travel marketing agency. Here's Propellic's here's Propellic's Twitter, LinkedIn, Meta profiles, etc. And it's just structured data for search engines to easily digest. I don't have data to substantiate this. It's a anecdotal hunch. It is very likely that structured data and schema markup as we go into the future will make a meaningful difference. They act as a way to give clear, true data to a model. It definitely influences visibility in Google search which means it's going to influence your visibility in AI overviews, if nothing else. Next one, build your answers for AI. So remember how we talked about passages being able to rank versus just pages as a whole? Well, here's how you optimize for that. Use headings that are the questions you think people will ask. And then with those headings, answer them with a full answer. So if you're the DMO, the destination marketing organization for New Zealand, someone's going to ask, when's the best time to visit New Zealand? You're going to respond February to April. April offers mild weather and fewer crowds in New Zealand. Full answer with the question and the answer. It works because it mirrors that conversational query format. It's something someone might ask to ChatGPT, and it gives AI a clean and quotable snippet. Similarly, we see a lot of these ordered lists in AI overviews and AI responses where you'll see Hotel A, Hotel B, Hotel C are the best hotels in a city. You won't get your full list quoted, but there's a good chance part of your list will be. And it's better to be on a list than to be skipped altogether. So use ordered lists on your pages. This one's naughty. I did a whole conversation about this in a webinar with a rival. This is the gray hat to black hat stuff. It's completely your call. I'm not recommending it. In theory, in practice, when an AI crawler visits your website, it raises its hand and says, hey, I'm an AI crawler. I'm Search GPT bot, or I'm GPT bot, or Cloud Anthropics, or whatever it is. You can technically serve that a completely different version of your website, stuffed with thousands of questions and answers. That will likely be a penalty of some sort someday. It's not right now. This is like the early days of Google. It's kind of a fun time to be optimizing. So depending on how risk tolerant you are, feel free to do that. I am not responsible for the outcome. And then unlinked mentions. So backlinks are the currency for SEO, right? Backlinks drive authority from one place to another, and they really help with rankings. And Google continues to say they don't, but we have so much evidence every single day that they do. And I would say you ask any SEO, and you'll learn that they agree if they're not just following everything Google says, which is a surefire way to not get visibility. So large language models care about the frequency things are mentioned and the correlation with those things in a topic. So when your brand, as we talked about a second ago with Apple and the phone, when your brand name repeatedly appears near a topic keyword, models infer authority. So if Propellic is constantly mentioned as the best travel marketing agency, there's a reason that we'd be showing up in GPT search, which we do for that term, that question. It's because the frequency that is mentioned, those two things together. Also, being referenced in top tier news outlets, there is some authority metric there without receiving backlinks. And then unlinked mentions are treated virtually the same as a linked mention with a data dump for a LLM training module. Okay, so now you've optimized. Those are some optimization recommendations. How do we measure? Especially when things are changing so much. 70% of AI overviews change in 60 days or less. It's hard, I'll be honest. Well, the first answer is we can't track one or two keywords here and there, one or two search terms here and there. We need to track hundreds to get statistical significance because it swings so much. So basically what we want to test is we want to test 100 or 1,000 different queries on a frequent basis to see what percent of them you're showing up for. And then further, we want to see if it's a positive reference to you or a negative reference to you and check the sentiment. So I've got some tools in a second that we can use to understand that. But again, if you're searching on the LLM modality, on just the core large language model that's not searching the internet, that's not using a database, it's brand sentiment, positive, negative, neutral. It's brand visibility, the percent of those searches that you show up for. And then for traditional SEO and search and retrieval, ranking in organic search across platforms continues to be the way to show up in things like AI overviews. So that means technical SEO, content, authority metrics, keep working on those things. You may be getting less traffic, but the business value is still there because the transaction still needs to happen. These are some tools we've checked out: Profound, Scrunch, Peak, for monitoring visibility in AI overviews and GPT, it will basically test daily or every 3 days where you show up for a list of terms and then measure that over time. And I see that we've got a lot of questions. We're coming up on the end of the structured portion, so we'll be able to dive into those shortly. So that's what I've got for you in terms of optimizing from a technical standpoint. We are continuing to research and discover and build out our knowledge and understanding of these things, and we publish them in two places. Number one is going to be our nav log, and the nav log is a biweekly newsletter that's produced and sent out by a colleague of mine, Soleil, who's helping me run the webinar today. And it's bite-sized travel marketing updates via email. We also capture some of the most popular LinkedIn posts that I've put up in that, so you can see that you can see exactly what's working, what's resonating with others. And then the other one is the Travel Marketing Podcast, which is also biweekly, and it's essentially interviews with travel marketers into their marketing strategies. So keep in mind, as you go forward, I've got a couple more things for you. Number one, AI is the default discovery layer. Going forward, I think Google is going to lose market share to ChatGPT and other platforms. But in addition to that, the people that are still using Google are going to be looking at AI overviews far more frequently than they are going to be clicking on websites and search over the next year or two. Number two, SEO is not enough alone. You need the large language model signals in addition to the SEO, even though the SEO continues to be incredibly helpful and impactful. And then finally, you have the option to either influence the data set or disappear by blocking robots. So your choice. Everything is getting trained pretty much quarterly right now. I want to talk about one more topic that's not in here. This came up in a question yesterday by someone who appears to be who's in this session right now. Thank you for the question yesterday. There's this thing called LLMs.txt. And if you know what a robots.txt is, that's essentially a file that you can use to tell different robots like Google, like ChatGPT, what to do when it gets to your site. If it's allowed to see things, if it's allowed to access things, generally they'll respect what your recommendations and requirements are. Like, don't go to this section of the website. The LLMs.txt is that for large language models, where it helps it understand and find the key pages, and then it delivers those pages in markdown format rather than in HTML, JavaScript, CSS, just so it can access all the content. The issue with that is twofold. Number one, I don't have any evidence that a single AI model is using that information. It's a great concept in theory. I think Anthropic even uses it on their website. They have an LLMs.txt, but I believe they've confirmed, or there's no evidence that any of the large language models are using this. Google has said that they absolutely do not use this. So large language models, LLMs.txt, not necessarily a good use for that reason. The other reason is you're going to serve it a markdown version of your site, which is basically plain text. So when a user clicks, they're going to get to a plain text version of your site. That is a horrible user experience. So I do not recommend the LLMs.txt right now. And for all of our clients that have asked about that, if and when it does become relevant, we will let you know and we'll help you roll it out. What we're going to do is we're giving a 30-minute AI visibility consultation to the first 10 requests. You'll get a report and then a walkthrough that's 30 minutes long from me or another strategist on the team. If you would like to fill that out, the link is there. Again, first 10, these take a while for us, but we did want to give some people the tools and equipment to be able to show up. For those of you who are raising hands, unless you want to be brave and actually come on the video and ask something, there is a Q&A section, and you're more, let's see, it won't make, how useful okay, great question, Yvonne. Before I get to the next part, you're not actually checking. So Yvonne asked, OpenAI takes data privacy seriously. They won't make private conversations public. Yes, that is very true. We're not checking other people's conversations. We're running our own searches on a 3 daily basis to see what changes. So we're not looking at somebody else's data. All right, let's jump into questions. I don't know if Sully or Amanda wants to come on and ask them to me, but I'll read them and go through them over here. Let's see. Number one, which platforms do we go to improve brand visibility? Does it imply we may go back to, oh wait, here, answer live so everybody can see it. Maybe everybody can see my answering now. Which platform would we go to improve brand visibility? Does it imply we may go back to traditional advertising to do this? Interesting question. We've, as marketers, transitioned heavily over the couple of last decade to performance marketing, where we can spend a dollar and see two. That's been great because it allows you to really dial things in, but it makes you really bad at brand marketing. So you'll see the larger a brand gets, generally, the more they invest in brand marketing, TV, radio, not those are bad examples, but CTV and et cetera. I don't know why I can't think of a single channel right now. What we find generally is that brand advertising is influencing AI models more. And that's anecdotal. Again, I don't have data to prove that, but based on all the things we just covered with PR mentions and brand mentions and sentiment. And then further, yes, I think brands need to relearn how to do brand marketing. I think performance marketing is great, but it's also diluted the effects. And you do get incremental lift that you can measure with incrementality studies to understand whether or not your brand marketing is impacting visibility. Let's see. I've got people raising hands that I know. James, I see you raising your hand. Do you want to come on the screen with me and ask in front of all the people? Um, I will give that option. I don't know how. Let's see. James, and I got Nisa as well. So I'm going to allow you to talk. James, feel free to ask your question. There we go. You're up. I think you got to unmute your microphone. He went hiding. Let's see. I'm going to go to Nisa. Nisa, did you still have a question? All right. While I'm waiting for that answer, I'm going to answer the next one. All right. So we've got Guillermo asking, traffic decrease typically mimics Google's last core update. How can you be sure traffic decrease doesn't correlate with the change in signal prioritization? So I think those both two mean the same thing. You're asking, based on my understanding, whether it's a change in how Google's looking at signals or a change in how Google's algorithm is working. Those to me both mean the same thing. So I would say that it's very likely that your ranking and visibility is influenced by a action that Google's taking in their ranking model. So if you see your visibility drop in AI overviews and in search, it's likely a search algorithm change. I got an anonymous person asking a very good question. How much time and effort should we really spend on Bing and what should we specifically do? Isn't it just pulling from other search engines? No, it is not. Bing has a completely separate algorithm. They try to model it after the ones that get the most traffic, which are the most attention, which is Google. But importantly, it is a different algorithm. So get your Bing Webmaster Tools up and optimize for those. I believe generally we see Bing is a little bit more influenced by social signals than Google is, a little bit less by uh, links, unique and authoritative links. So yes, that's how I would do it. All right, I got an anonymous attendee asking how and where do we check if AI bots have access to our website? I will show you. If somebody would like to send their website in the chat, I will show you how to check. I will. You'll have to make yourself not anonymous though. All right, I'm gonna check one. Okay, here we go. I've got columbusfoodadventures.com. So I'm gonna go to this website. I'm gonna open up my browser a little bit bigger. 1 second. So what you'll do generally is you will go to a website. That is not a URL that works. Let's try a different one. Brazos Bluffs Ranch. Here we go. Ah, Texas. That's where I live. Fun. Okay, so right here I can see number one, the page is loading for me as a user. What I want to do is I want to check the source and see if substantial portions of the content both show up in. You have way too many pop-ups. This is outrageous. Fix that. Bad UX signal. Google has something called Nav Boost, which measures user experience. You don't want to send bad user experience signals. People will bounce from your pages and that'll hurt your rankings. But yes, your content is showing up on the page. So that's number one. We've checked that it's in the source. The second step is to go /robots.txt and see if there's anything in here that's being intentionally blocked. So let me show you how to read this. It's cascading, user agent, all, allow, every page. For Google, disallow this specific section, which is not seemingly important. For Google Ads bot, you're disallowing some sections. That's completely fine. Google Ads bot, that's fine. I don't know what pedal block is, but you're disallowing it from everything and it reads from top to bottom. So the last thing mentioned is the one that has the most impact, is the one it listens to. You're crawl delaying, which is good. I mean, this is for Ahrefs and dot. So you've done some specific bot blocking, but there's nothing in here that's blocking ChatGPT or any other large language model from crawling your website. So that's how you check if that's a quick and dirty way to check and see if you're blocking bots from your site. All right. Let's go back into presenter view. Okay. So next we've got is allowing all good enough, but should there be specific instructions for AI crawlers? So that's where I think this was asked right before I got into the LLMs.txt. There's no real good way to give specific instructions to AI crawlers. I mean, there's no reason to limit them from places of your site unless it's sensitive content. So I generally just let the AI crawlers roam free on my site. Uh, Ursilia, you're fine in the chat. Should you be careful of duplicate content with AI crawlers? Funny, this is pretty spammy, but you actually should have more duplicate content that reinforces what you want the AI crawler to know about your brand. It contradicts what you would do for Google. Although with Google, you need to know there's no penalty for having duplicate content. You just will only have one qualify for ranking in most cases. So one will just be completely disregarded. But note, yes, the more frequently the same thing is said, the more likely the AI model is to mention that thing when it gets to it. Does Google punish AI generated content? No. Google punishes bad content. Was that straightforward enough? Let's see. Another anonymous attendee. Guys, why are you trying to hide yourselves? Goodness gracious. Now I've got everybody putting their robots.txt file into the chat. That's hilarious. I don't think I can get to everybody, but I will do my best to answer a couple of them. With all the talk about loss of share for Google and people using AI overviews, how important are URLs versus just having strong content and structuring said content well? Will URLs and the importance of semantic fit for them become less important? So I feel like this is likely asking about exact match URLs. And when I say exact match URLs, I'm really talking about someone who has a Frisco, Texas walking tour. I don't know why, but if someone who has a Frisco, Texas walking tour, having Frisco, Texas walking tour.com. That's an exact match domain. And as much as I hate to say it, and as much as I hate to see it, in organic search, those typically rank better for the target terms. And we mentioned earlier that organic search rankings drive AI overview visibility. So for that modality, yeah, actually, I think exact match domains, unfortunately, still continue to carry some weight. But on the other hand, it won't affect its visibility in AI large language models as long as the large language model can access the content. Let's see. Yes, Joseph, we'll talk about that in a second. Propellic does help companies with AI overview visibility. That's one of the core competencies of our firm. And the reason we're talking about this today. I don't know how to pronounce the name. I apologize, but somebody's asking, my website is not JavaScript light. What is the impact of not changing this just yet? I'm a small operator and I recently hired an SEO agency for development. It depends on how important being visible in AI is to you. So when we look at JavaScript accessibility, just make sure that the content, like you can go into Chrome settings. You can go into settings. I can't click it because there we go. And then you can go JavaScript. If you really just want to see what it sees, you can turn off JavaScript entirely. I'm not going to do it because I don't want to accidentally end the webinar, but you do have the option to turn off JavaScript entirely and you can test the website. And then when you're doing that, I would also say make sure to just check the source code because just because you can't see it on the page doesn't mean it's not there. Hey, Patrick, based on how we LLMs are really liking schema, do you foresee a lot of new types of markup coming out in the next little while? I don't. honestly. The schema markup library updates so slowly. It's a nonprofit. I don't know. It's got pretty much everything you need. That's just a prediction. I'm not the end all be all in that respect, but I don't necessarily see like a huge development on the structured data and schema markup side. How can we improve showing up in LLMs beyond the H2 formats mentioned in adding schema? We've done these things and it doesn't seem to work. Well, there were about 10 other things in here that we gave as basic recommendations for visibility there. You can get a lot more nerdy, but go rewatch the webinar and you'll get some recommendations and thoughts, or reach out for that AI visibility consultation and we'll go deeper. I just didn't want to get too complicated in a mass market recording. Is user generated content such as Reddit or reviews, TripAdvisor more influential with AI results? Is there strong research to confirm that? I do not know of any research to confirm that. No. I also, in the way that those models work, don't know that it would matter, except for the retrieval ones. I mean, anecdotally, I would think that reviews make a difference versus just self-written content. But then I look at how a model is trained and it really doesn't matter. So I don't have a good answer for that. Maybe, maybe not. I just viewed an AI overview in my industry. Only one business is highlighted in blue, and I'm able to click on it and go to their website. How come other businesses don't have the same option? Because Google's recommending one and not the other. It's also an unbaked product. They're still working on it every single day, so expect that to change over time. What does the impact AI overviews have on ads? Will they not compete? And all this machine pleasing to rank will not affect the quality of content produced. Machine pleasing has always affected the quality of content produced, unfortunately. I apologize to break that to you. Not ideal, but that's why the internet is such crap now. That's why you have to scroll for 10 miles to get the recipe card on a recipe you're looking up and learn about someone's grandmother's pet raccoon inspiring them to create that lasagna. Um, the impact AI overviews have on ads. I believe I read a study that they're decreasing click-through rates, but Google is also testing AI visibility ad units within AI overviews, which will likely help that. Google's ad business is the biggest portion of their business. I don't see them just letting advertising fall off the map, but also they are working against forces. I think Google is in trouble in a lot of ways. So really optimizing for the future of search and discoverability is key right now. ChatGPT, on the other hand, with ads, Sam Altman came out and said he doesn't want ads and paid placements in ChatGPT, and he wants commission on every transaction they refer out, which is interesting. Which would make it the new OTA because the commission would be 1 to 2% too, so it'd be a lot more financially advantageous if you could actually get bookings. But we'll have to see. I mentioned, so the question is, you've mentioned that top X queries for ordered lists is helpful to use. He's asking about, Anton is asking about HTML tags. Am I asking about ordered lists or unordered lists? Those are those tags that he put in there. When we did our research, it typically was ordered lists. I don't see why. It could have just been a correlation, but it was typically ordered lists. That doesn't mean unordered lists wouldn't work. What is crawl delay and what number should we see? This was referencing the robots.txt file that we looked at here where it said crawl delay. If there's a bot that is visiting your website and it's overusing your server resources and making your website slower, but it's a bot you still want to use your website, you can tell it to limit itself. I don't have any of these modern web infrastructure on sites like Webflow and hosting providers like WP Engine. They're typically they're way fast enough to support this, so it's not really a concern of mine. I don't generally limit crawl speed. I just either decide I want to block a bot or let it crawl my site. For AI crawlers to recognize my website, do I need to be within the top sponsored companies on Google, or do I need to be within the top 10 after sponsored company who pay for that sponsorship? Thank you, Mark. You do not need to pay Google for Google Ads to show up in AI overviews. It will help substantially for visibility if you show up in those next 10 links, the free ones, the SEO ones. So many good questions. This is fun. Will only H2 schema work or will the regular FAQ schema do? So H2 schema is not a schema type. I was just showing you a a different way to optimize. So heading tags. So yes, regular FAQ schema will do. Heading to tags, different optimization technique. The product cards are not readable by AI, and the tech team is working on that. But how can the content from the rest of it be improved? I can't give you the full review right now, but if you want to sign up for this AI visibility consultation and you're one of the first 10, which I might be too late already, we can do that, or you can reach out to Propellic to talk about working together and helping you with that. Last three, unless any more get dumped in, and then I'll check the chat real quick. We've got a question. Is there a way to estimate search volume for LLMs or a specific destination, such as the good old keyword planner? Oh, I hate this one. I wish. So I don't know how they're doing it, but Profound is applying estimates. I have no idea how they're doing it. The way we get estimates on Ahrefs and SEMrush is clickstream data. Basically, when you get a plugin, sometimes Chrome will ask you, do you want to share data with developers? And when you do things, when you click yes, often it'll use clickstream monitor. I believe this is how it works. Don't quote me on this. Actually, I hate that this is being recorded. Clickstream just uses a representative sample of the population to estimate the search volume of specific keywords. Then you've got Google Keyword Planner, straight from the horse's mouth. I don't know of anything like that on the AI side, and I'm waiting very impatiently for it. Although the searches are so custom that I don't think we're going to get volume. It's going to be about topics, not about specific queries. Are there any good resources on how to structure your page, both HTML and visible layout, so an LLM can more accurately crawl and parse it? Visible layout doesn't matter to me. It's really just what's in that .html file. Structure is unimportant to large language models, unlike Google, which is really nice. It's not completely unnecessary, but structured, you can dump a very, very unstructured piece of content into a large language model for training or for usage, and you'll find that it works similarly. Does AI talk to social media platforms as well to pull data? How important is the social media for all of this? I don't know. I don't know of any data partnerships that any of the large language models have with social media companies. If they have them, then yes. If they don't, then they probably don't, because they probably don't crawl them without. Well, they probably do crawl them without permission. Let's be honest. But yeah, that was the last question. So a couple other things. Again, we've got the nav log for biweekly travel. I think if you signed up for this webinar, you're automatically subscribed to the nav log. And then the podcast is biweekly. And then finally, again, AI consultation here. If you ever want to get a hold of me, Brennan at propellic.com. LinkedIn.com/Brennan Bliss is where I'm posting pretty much daily or every other daily content on this topic. So make sure to follow over there and join about 4,000 people in my network. I appreciate everybody joining us today. This was a great chat. Had over 200 attendees, and we will see you at the next one.